The yellow area is the area of uncertainty. If I'm using the poor quality data, the area of uncertainty is more, while on the right hand side, if I'm using the data which is better, the area of uncertainty has reduced. So, for our institute, IIT Kanpur, we have done our work on the flood modeling, and now, as per the rainfall, how the flood will spread. So what is happening here now, the quality of the data is better because you can observe with 10 centimeter accuracy vertically, so you can make very good predictions or simulations of the various floods there. So I think because I will just finish my talk over here because we have to proceed also for the rest of it. I will just leave it here if there is any question at this stage. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, please, any question? Yeah, if there is any question, and of course, I will be available here, then you can ask me questions later also. And if at all there is any question now, yeah, please.
Is that kind of medium that is measuring with reflection of...
Exactly, absolutely.
And then what is the effect of that local, that is atmospheric conditions like wind or temperature?
Yeah, yeah. This thing is exactly like the total station. What do you think? I tell the technology to make it simple. You are sitting in a helicopter with a total station, and then you are sighting, say, with an efficiency of 5,000 points every second. So many points you are sighting with that.
But it should be reflected in the same one as a issue and that...
No, the thing is, in general, all the objects around us, for that particular wavelength, they behave in a diffuse reflection. So even the rays coming here, hitting here, and the reflection is going everywhere, something is coming to me also. So I measure the time of travel. That's what we do. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, please. Yeah. Here on board, I've got a GNSS, the GPS over here. Here in the ground, I keep a reference receiver so that by doing the DGPS, I'm able to determine this location with around 2 to 3 centimeter accuracy. Number one. So I know this location now. Then, all the coordinates which I'm observing, because I have the GPS here, are like the GPS coordinates. So they are like the GPS coordinates means I will have, if I project it also in the UTM, I'll have the northeasting, northing, and the ellipsoidal height. But ellipsoidal height is of no use to me. I need to convert that ellipsoidal height to the orthometric height or local mean sea level height. So there we develop a transformation model for the India is currently developing the Geoidal model. Right now we don't have the Geoidal model. So we have to develop a local transformation model for it. Yeah. Anything else, please? Okay, great. Thank you very much. So, can I start the proceedings from here now? If you look at the topics for this, our first speaker is Dr. Upendra, and he's going to talk about the energy quality of our luxurious building. I think it's a very nice topic, luxurious and poverty, both in one topic. And that is the reality. We have got luxurious buildings, but we have the energy poverty over there. It's a very nice topic. And Dr. Rajapaksha is the head and senior lecturer in architectural design and architectural science at the Department of Architecture of University of Moratuwa in Sri Lanka. He earned his doctorate in architecture, specializing in sustainable design from the University of Queensland, Australia. And since then, he is engaged in research and practice in low energy architecture, carbon sustained buildings, and environmental sustainability in the built environment. And he has over 19 years of involvement as a practicing architect and 14 years as an educator and a researcher in architecture. His architectural design with Professor Richard Hyde, the name was Healthy Home Project, in Gold Coast in Australia, has won the South East Queensland Environment Award in 2004. He is a recipient of many internal and national academic awards, including the University of Queensland Postgraduate Research Award of the University of Queensland in 2000, the International Postgraduate Research Scholarship of the Australian Government in 2000, Research Award in 2012 of Sri Lanka Institute of Architects, and University of Moratuwa Research Excellence Award in 2 years, 2012 and 2015. So we have very excellent and accomplished speaker here. So I will request Dr. Rajapaksha to go with his talk. And what we will do, I will introduce the rest of the speakers later. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, friends. And so I'm going to talk about two important scenarios today for our life, day-to-day life. One is about the energy poverty of our buildings, and other thing is about the very pressing problem in our urban environments. So it's mainly about two issues relevant to our day-to-day life. One is about energy, and other thing is about our health when we live in urban areas. So built mass, built mass is a problem today. Built mass you can see in any urban areas like buildings and road network. So everything contributes to create built mass, but the characteristics of built mass contributes to various problems to us. That is mainly because of we are moving away from the concept of bioclimatic design. In bioclimatic design, the concerns about people, climate, architecture and technology is integrated into one system, but in today's practice we forget people, we forget climate, we forget environment, and we just design buildings. So that's one of the main problems for all these problems. So my research and my presentation today is about some evidence that we collected from a National Research Council sponsored research involving many office buildings in Colombo, and the research included majority of all office buildings found in city of Colombo in many townships like Fort, Slave Island, Kolopitiya, Vakanda, Dammalage, Milagiri, and so on. So we investigated nearly 2 million square feet population and involving 86 buildings. And most of the building characteristics are within the narrow platforms, and we found that almost all the buildings are sealed, and those buildings never communicate with outside climate. And these are some of the common forms that you can see. All the forms are very narrow, tight, compact, and never have any dialogue with climate interaction. And we found that out of all these 486 buildings, we measured the energy footprint of each building and found that the average is around 200 to 250 kilowatt hours per meter square per annum. And that was a national, but most of the buildings have about 400 kilowatt hours per meter square per annum. And whereas the international good practice recommended in some areas like Europe and Australia should be around 110. So we can now see the criticality of our problem. Developed countries try to maintain their energy footprint of their luxurious buildings at 110 kilowatt hours per meter square per annum, but whereas in our buildings, in most of our government buildings have nearly 400 kilowatt hours per meter square per annum. So you can now imagine the criticality of this situation. And we try to find out the reason for this, and the reason is that buildings are sealed and never integrate with the climate, because climate is not favorable for us. Climate is highly harsh and climate has a lot of unnecessary elements that we don't need. And we investigated all these buildings and found that this behavior. We investigated the buildings during weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays, and buildings because buildings, all the air conditioners were switched off, and we found that internal temperature of all these buildings, comes to about 40 degrees centigrade. So buildings are like ovens, and so in simply, the air conditioners are used to cool ovens, not to cool people. So do you agree with this? There is some very big fundamental mistake, right? So we need to address this, because our comfort range is within 24 to 28 degrees, but our building interiors, the temperature reaches 40 degrees, and we use air conditioners to cool these ovens. So this is the scenario during weekends, and how about the scenario during weekdays, where the air conditioners are on. When the air conditioners are on, the system, the mechanical system set the temperature, the set point temperature at 24 degrees. This is that, but internal temperatures close to the windows move 10 degrees above the set point temperature. Building is air conditioned. Okay, all these buildings are luxurious, and building is air conditioned, and the internal temperatures move 10 or more degrees above the set point temperature. And building interior is struggling to maintain its set point temperature within 24 degrees. And there is a heat stress on the air conditioning system. The heat stress coming from outside. And this is one scenario. The other scenario is, some other buildings maintain, now in the previous situation, the internal temperature is about 10 degrees above the set point temperature, but they maintain the energy footprint around 120 kilowatt hours per meter square per annum. But there is the heat stress inside the building is extensive. On the other side, there are some other population. The internal temperatures is few degrees above set point temperature, like around 25. The set point temperature is 24. But the internal temperature is around 25, but sacrificing the nature, their energy footprint is extremely high. Their energy footprint is around 300 or 320 kilowatt hours per meter square per annum. So all these two ends, two extremes. On one side, the internal temperature is very much higher than set point temperature, but they hardly maintain their energy footprint close to 120, but heat stress component is extreme. But on the other situation, the buildings manage to maintain the internal set temperature, but its energy footprint is extremely high, like 320 kilowatt hours per meter square. So both situations are not acceptable. The reason, what is the ideal situation? This is the mapping. In the ideal situation, you can manipulate your architectural design. For example, you can a microclimate around the building can be favorable to minimize heat gain from outside. And on the other hand, the building form, its plan form and sectional form, both sectional form and plan form can be manipulated to minimize heat gain from outside and remove heat developed inside the building from inside to outside. And then thirdly, the third order is the envelope characteristics, the material characteristics, facade design can help to avoid or completely avoid heat coming from outside, and also it can help to remove heat from inside to outside. And last, you can think about system efficiency. So these are the strategies. There are thousands of strategies you can integrate with the design, and the outcome could be like this. Black line shows the external peaks. External peaks can go to that's the ambient temperature. Ambient temperature can go up to like 33 or 34. But the blue line is the internal temperature. You can synchronize the internal temperature by manipulating the architectural design. Architectural design in terms of its microclimate, plan form, sectional form, envelope. So this is the basic fundamental concept of bioclimatic design. And what is required to do this is just 200 or 300 rupees. What you need is just 6B pencil and a butter sheet.
Dr. Rajapaksha, sir, we have time to take just 2 questions. And so, if there are questions to Dr. Rajapaksha, sir, he can answer those immediately. 2 questions. And later on, at the end of this session, again there will be an opportunity to ask the questions. So, any question from the floor, please.
No. These standards in respect to energy usage and the air quality is not integrated or not applied or not developed in Sri Lanka. Yeah, we have the knowledge. We have the knowledge base. We have done enough research. That's totally wrong. I totally challenge this green building concept. If you want to make another session, I am ready to talk about green building, so-called green building concept now in Sri Lanka is a total failure.
Okay, yeah. Any other question? So I think he did demonstrate also practically that for a luxurious building there can be poverty of energy because the electric energy is shut down a couple of times here. How did you manage that? I do not know that.
Sorry?
How did you manage to demonstrate that in a luxurious building like this, the energy, electric energy, we are in poverty and it is shutting down time and again. So that was a kind of demonstration actually also from you.
Yes.
Yeah, anyway, thank you very much for the nice presentation and we'll move to the, yes please.
Okay. Manipulating the design. Oh, minimizing the reliance of mechanical system. Okay. Yes. Yeah, because you can have different types of plan forms. Simply deep plan, narrow plans, plans with atriums, courtyards, square forms, rectangle forms. Those different forms behave differently with the climate. Some forms admit more heat from outside, but some form can remove or avoid heat coming into the building, like the sections, building sections. When you have an atrium, you can usually the hot air is less dense, so the hot air naturally goes up. So you need to provide some openings at the higher level to remove hot air, but then there will be vacuum created inside the building, so you have to provide some cool layers coming from outside. So without any tree, you won't believe, I show you because I need some time. Without any tree, you can shape the surrounding of the building by manipulating your craft. You can manipulate different forms. It's like walking under sun with an umbrella. Wherever sun comes, you take the umbrella to that side, then you get complete shade. So like that, you can craft the whole building architecture. You can craft your architecture to create more shading on the building openings. And the opening, we have to have openings towards wind direction sometimes, but wind is problematic in Sri Lanka because wind carries heat. So then you have to take only wind without heat. So when you take wind into the building through an opening, then the opening has to be shaded. So you can manipulate the whole architecture, the three-dimensional form, to create shading on the in this, and then the envelopes like double skins. Right, double skins reduce the heat transfer into the building, and also making the buildings ventilated in the night, because now we experience night cooling situation because the temperature in these days about 6 or 8 degrees lower than daytime. So if you make the building ventilated in the night, during the night, and if you have like thermal mass like concrete and other heavy thermal mass in your floors and walls, so the entire structure can be cool. Then on the following day, the heat component in your air can be absorbed into this thermal mass, cool thermal mass, and that will contribute to reduce internal temperature in the building. So there are thousands of strategies you can do, and you can completely cool the internal.
Man's life is independent. He is born not for the development of the society alone, but for the development of himself. B.R. Ambedkar. I would like to start my presentation with this quote. And I have derived a topic which is, I got a theme from KDU, and I have derived a topic from your theme as Ecumenopolis, Global Collaboration and Asian Renaissance, Quantity Surveying Perspective. So there are three key areas in my topic as Ecumenopolis, Global Collaboration, Asian Renaissance, and there is one new added one by myself, it is Quantity Surveying. I will talk about that later. What is it? Ecumenopolis is fictitious. A single planet-wide city including all Earth inhabitants. Then, what is global collaboration? It is people across the world communicate with one another for learning, business, knowledge sharing, etc. using online tools. Then Asian Renaissance is slightly different to this. It is the novel development paradigm seen in Asia, especially this talks about the development boom which happened in Asia after 14th century. Science fiction writers have long dreamed of a completely urbanized planet. It's nearly 50 to 100 years ago they have started dreaming about that. It is a planet which is covered, it's a vast city covered by all whatever things which is made by human. It's not natural. Only human beings will be the natural existence. And we can assume that Ecumenopolis can be assumed as a development which is arising from urbanization, population growth, transport need and human network. And this is a city where the technology is used as an enabler and solution for all the problems. Technology will be a key feature in this Ecumenopolis. And we know it started from metropolis, then to megapolis, then to Ecumenopolis. As you all know, metropolis is taking one city, key city and developing it. Megapolis is taking few key cities, linking them together and developing to one city. Going beyond that, Ecumenopolis is taking whole world and developing it to one city. You can understand the change of magnitude of that work. Ecumenopolis is a very big work. Okay? By means these cities create. Assume world as one city, there will be increased human cooperation. We will be dealing with different ethnic cultural groups. Then there will be specializations coming up. There will be parties who are specialized to do certain things. And there will be mass production. There will be centralized locations of production. Then diversity of lifestyles will happen. We will change the way we eat, the way we get education, the way we spend our leisure. And with these things, there will be subcultures coming in the main cultures of the world. And there will be innovations coming one after the other. Sometimes we may not be able to cater them even. Okay? Then, due to all these things, intercultural and interethnic contacts and relationships will grow. Therefore, this evolution is inevitable. We cannot stop it. But it is important to start planning now itself for the Ecumenopolis to make it fully livable and comfortable for mankind. So the Ecumenopolis which is coming should be sustainable for mankind. Why do we need it? So you can see this picture and understand to address urban crisis due to human settlement. You can see the picture and understand it. Then we can see to avoid disappearance of small neighborhoods and towns. You can see towns close by undeveloped villages. Then there are special problems like pollution to avoid them. Then to optimize the efficiency of city operations by having properly planned cities, where you have road network, where there are different places for office, there will be different places for forests, etc. Intensification of the crisis will happen with population increase. You can see with the increase of population, there will be more spaces for people. Then there will be more vehicles coming up. There will be more highways, roads, airports, ports coming up. And there will be more energy consumption. Then more space for complicated dwellings and service networks. All these things are linked to problems such as garbage disposal. Therefore, when we are developing future cities, we have to consider all these things. Those huge cities should compose with every human amenity. So those cities should be very complicated. In addition to that, there are challenges as well. What I see is the main challenge to develop these cities not only to function as engines of economic growth, not only to produce, not only to develop, but also to act as agents of social change. Cities must direct people towards the correct social change. There are considerations. Spatial development and related planning efforts should be taken very carefully, and we must direct towards the better side. Then there will be fundamental changes in our lives. As I mentioned, the way we eat, the way we spend our leisure, or the way we spend our family life even get changed. Therefore, we must direct towards the good side. Then, with all these ICT developments, dynamics of modernization will happen. Again, this modernization must be good for human beings. In addition to that, consumption behavior will get changed. We may all eat fast food in future. We may all wear branded suits only. With all these things, there will be production condition changes. As I mentioned earlier, there will be centralized locations where producing all the goods and services to the whole world or to this city. With all these things, there will be specific urban problems such as flooding, garbage disposal, global warming and air pollution coming up. So, there are considerations. To address these considerations, what I believe is global collaboration will be very much necessary. It will be a good solution, global collaboration. But there is a question, this is the major concern which I have marked in red, whether there will be a global consensus as to how people should live in a one city. You all know, according to our skin color we are divided, according to our religion, ethnic group, according to our countries, continentals, we are divided. So, will we be able to have a consensus to live in one city? Then, what would be the whatever the arrangement of the city, whether it is like America, Europe, Asia or Australia. So, it will be a huge problem. There will be so many influences coming up. Therefore, as professionals, we have a big responsibility to play. We must use global collaboration to make this mega Ecumenopolis to a better place for human beings. So, Therefore, we have to remember that we must direct Ecumenopolis to the correct direction. That is our professional responsibility. Then, I would like to move to my specialized area. What would be the role of QS in this Ecumenopolis? First of all, I would like to tell who is quantity survey first of all. Quantity survey is the cost manager in built environment. He will be managing the cost from inception to the end of the life of a building. Think about that. He will be managing cost from cradle to grave. Okay? That is his role. Right? What would be his role in future city developments? There are two dimensions what we have to consider. Cost and value. That would be the main two dimensions of quantity survey in future developments. And QS will be a smart technologist who is knowing beyond his traditional role but who is good at IT and technology. He should be able to cooperate with other professionals to develop integrated urbanization. So he should be good at collaboration as well as he should be good at technology. How do we produce QSs to cater these requirements? My question is, what type of animal are we going to produce as a future QS? That is a thought for academics like us and professional bodies. Are we going to produce this animal anymore, or what type of animal are we going to produce? Please think about that. Right? One of the most prominent international body, professional body has already considered this in their website. This is extracted from the RICS, Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, 2018 web. So they have already identified important competencies of QS. So you can see my next slide where I have extracted important points. First one, conflict avoidance, management and dispute resolution. So when we are living in one city, all the members in the world, there will be so many conflicts coming up. So RICS says QS should be able to avoid conflicts. He should be able to manage conflicts. In addition to that, due diligence. So to avoid harm to the other persons or their property is important. Why? We will be dealing with multicultural people in future. Now even we are doing, it will grow up. Then data management. So as I mentioned earlier, QS will be working as a technologist. So he should be conversant with technology and ICT. Then diversity, inclusion and team working. So those are very important points what the RICS has identified. Mutual respect, effective relationships, clear communication and explicit understanding among project participants is important. Why? We will be dealing with different people in the group. In addition to that, critical self-reflection of professionals is important. We should be always able to reflect back our successes and failures. Then, RICS has identified environmental services, project feasibility studies. Life is independent. He is born not for the development of the society alone, but for the development of himself. Why? Man can develop cities, man can develop all the society's physical resources, but he should improve his attitudes, skills and competencies to be happy in this developed world. Thank you.
Again, we have got time for a few questions here. There are questions from the audience, please.
Professor Perera, just to add a footnote to what you just said. It was the Greek architect Doxiades who fathered the science of acoustics. In the 40s and 50s, when Europe was in shambles after the World War, And he's the one who coined the term Ecumenopolis. To have envisioned a global city when the entirety of the world, especially the area in which he was living, Europe in shambles, that is a skill of a visionary. But before he coined the word Ecumenopolis, he coined another word. But I just run through the series of growths that leads up to the Ecumenopolis. He first talked about the basic dwelling unit, and you started with that comment. The basic dwelling unit is oneself. So that's the point of departure for your entire presentation. And then he goes on to say, the human being and the room, the house group, the small neighborhood, hamlet, large village, small town, large town, small metropolis, large metropolis, small megalopolis, large megalopolis, and then the word Ecumenopolis. Ecumenopolis is the continent as a city, and we are seeing that European Union with one currency. So he didn't really envision a global city where the demographics were completely nullified and crushed into some universal mulch. He envisioned a global city where the nations constituted the demographics. And that's the footnote that I would like to add. And since we are already seeing the growth of the Ecumenopolis, where regions get together and come under one currency with the demographics intact, that eventually would lead to the global city, Ecumenopolis. Ecumenopolis create one global city. Takes a long time. One more thing. You talked about the contingencies that we would have to look into before that happens. Actually, there are type 1 civilizations. I'm talking about astrophysics now. Type 2 civilizations, type 2 civilizations. We haven't even reached type 1 civilization to do that. The astrophysics believe that we have to control ecological collapse. You touched on that. And the other is radioactivity. We have to master the bomb. We would do that through the Ecumenopolis, through human cooperation. And if only we do that, would we achieve the status of a type 1 civilization. And to do that, we would have to be an Ecumenopolis. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, any more comment, feedback, footnote, or question? Yeah. It's very important. Thank you. Okay, just a small question from our side. As he also said, in Ecumenopolis, the cultural differences which are there. For example, if you think of the South region over here also, the they have formed the European Union, then Britain, it went out of it, some reasons. But the cultural things, the cultural roots, they play some very important role, isn't it? Do you have any comment on that?
That is what I have mentioned. There will be cultural interactions. There will be subcultures coming in main cultures with the interactions.
Yeah, there is a conflict in homogenization. For example, everybody is eating nowadays McDonald's. It's not in the US, it's everywhere. Things are becoming homogeneous in some sense. But at the same time, there is a relevance of the original roots of the culture. So there is a conflict between these two ideas.
Yeah. So there will be problems with the original culture and all. There will be new subcultures coming in. So with that, that's why I mentioned that whether we will have a consensus. There will be people having the traditional ideas. There will be a new generation having new ideas. There will be a conflict.
Yeah.
So when I say the traditional food and all, my daughter used to say it's traditional thinking. Likewise, there will be a conflict of ideas.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just a comment about what you just mentioned, Professor Lohan.
Established the present Geodetic horizontal control network with SLD99 datum and also the course network for your time introduction. This presentation, my key points, the historical background of a geodetic control network and the
geodetic control network improvement from time to time with the technological advancement. Then the new establishment of course network, that is continuously reference network of Sri Lanka. And finally, I would like to talk about the historical perspective of vertical geodetic control network. The historical background, in 1957, the triangulation network of Sri Lanka has commenced. Most of the triangulation network points were on top of the mountains, in the mountain areas, and the other low ground areas, they have erected some towers. From each point to the other point, measured the angles in between the triangles, measured the angles, and there were two baselines. There were two baselines in Kandavala and Betikalo, Nigambu side and Betikalo. One baseline is at Nigambu, that is from Kandavala to Halgastoda. The other one is the station made by J. Jackson. The coordinates were published in 1932. The accuracy of the control network was around 20,000, only 20,000, which is not sufficient for our present work. Then after 1992, with the development of the technology, we have improved the network, the same network, by replacing the destroyed points. We measure angular measurements and the distances. In the history, the first triangulation was only angular measurements, only two baselines measured. But with this, in 1992 triangulation, measured all the distances in between the points. That is the difference. Used and for T3 equipment for the angular measurements and MRS7 for the distance measurement. With this, all measurements, angular measurements and the distances, the network improved up to the 1:40,000 accuracy. Even this accuracy is not enough for our present. Then after from 1996 to 1999, we have established a new control network. That is the present control network we are using. With this control network, there are many points observed, all points observed, and the network established by using the GPS measurements. During that time, we used Lanka 300 system. There are two networks. This is called principal network, consisting of 11 points. Those 11 points are placed in different part of the country, the one base point in the other. This network was adjusted using the GPS baselines, and the accuracy improved up to 1:700,000. There are only 11 points. Then at the same time, established the primary control network. During that period, we could not establish the points in northern part of the country. Only one point established in Jaffna. With this network, altogether 273 points were there. Later in 2010, in between 2010 and 2012, 168 points. all those points are previously established control points. We have known positions. Inside the network area, there are 35 control points. The differences, vector yield difference is shown there. Many points are within 5 centimeter accuracy. Few points are, I think, more than 5 centi. Even out of the.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we still have time for questions. We just finished in the right time. Thank you. So, yeah, 2 questions, please. Any questions from the audience? Okay, I have some small questions here. One thing regarding your course network, because you're providing corrections to the people who are using it, and private parties or the government organizations. So, is there any charge for that?
Yes. That's at the moment. At the moment, we charge for one receiver 2,000 rupees per day for the real-time service, and for the GNF downloading service, data downloading service, 600 rupees per station. And SSR post, we have not given this service to others, private parties. Only department use this. Okay. And there are 3 packages. One day service, real-time service, 2,000 rupees per day, and 10,000 rupees per 7 days, and 30,000 rupees per 30 days. For this 30,000 package, they will get GN web service and SSR post service free of charge.
Okay, right. And regarding the choice model development, because you're going to develop the choice model also for the Sri Lanka, so which approach are you going by? Are you going by the labeling and the genus approach and then developing the transformations, or are you going by the gravimetric observations?
At the moment, we are established
University, and currently the chairman of Geomatics board there, and Dr. Thilantha, he received his BSc degree in surveying science from Sabaragamuwa University in 2003, and he was awarded Institute Fellowship in 2005 to complete his MSc degree in remote sensing and GIS at AIT Bangkok in Thailand. In 2007, he was awarded a Japanese government scholarship to pursue his PhD there, and after returning to Sri Lanka, he resumed his duty as senior lecturer at the Faculty of Geomatics in his earlier university. And he is as the director of staff development in the university. And he has a very interesting development in his institute. He actually started the Master of Surveying Science degree in 2016, which is a unique achievement. And for last 10 years, he has been very active in research and has published around 30 journal papers. And
thank you so much, Professor Dammalage, for your kind introduction. And you pronounced my name correctly.
Thank you.
And also the university. Thank you so much. Alright, so let's talk about in very general topic, but I will go into some scientific findings as well. So I will try to mix the things together, and I'll discuss with you about the geospatial technologies, and beyond information age, I will tell you what is the next era in my presentation beyond this information age that we are following. Okay, when it comes to geoinformation technology, we all know that it's the core of the nation development, where the fundamental measurements and the data which provide for any kind of a development. So the geospatial technologies could be in many different forms that start with very fundamental things like total station and GPS, GNSS, satellite imageries, drone, UAVs, and LiDAR, laser, what Professor Lohani was talking about, and also the complicated GIS analysis, different things that we can use. All these things will provide very essential geolocated or geospatial data for any kind of development requirement. So when it comes to the geospatial data, so that represents the reality, so that could mean many different forms like two-dimensional representation and thematic or character, or three-dimensional representation where we can get the three-dimensional information or the data from the real world. So all these different data will provide us very useful information for very to go for a very meaningful decision. So that's the very important thing. So let me give you one example how this information provides us very meaningful information. So one of the key aspects of geoinformation technology is remote sensing, where you can get satellite data. In most of the days, you can go for free satellite data, so that is wonderful. Even not very low resolution, but high resolution, like Landsat or the different sensors which is coming in the recent years. And this is one study that we have done for rice yield estimation and forecasting, something which is very relevant for our country, so where we can adapt this technology. What the nation is doing for the yield forecast, we are not doing any forecasting, we are estimating. So this is the thing that we are suggesting for the forecast. Estimation and forecast, there's two different things. When you estimate, the harvest is there. When you forecast, you predict the harvest before the product comes to your hand. So that's very important because we can do certain plans, import, export, different things. So what we did, we tried to incorporate geospatial technology to support this decision making in an effective way. So what we did, we first tried to, so this is the sample area that I want to show you. We did for two different districts. This is Plenary area where we tested our development. The first thing that we have to identify is the cultivated area, paddy. So we can't say the paddy lands. We have different seasons in Sri Lanka, so in different seasons, even in different years, they cultivated different patches. So first we have to identify, before forecasting or estimating the yield, we have to identify which areas were cultivated. So we can get this data from satellite images. So this is basically done with free satellite data, MODIS. So we came up with good results. So I'll show you some results. So these are the statistics came up with this is important. So we compare the last two columns. So that's important. That's the comparison between the conventional statistics that they collected after the harvest and the difference between our prediction. So it was very, the prediction as a nation. Global the entire global the development is giving us kind of a very important facility in Asian region. You have these facilities, use it. So are we ready for that? The one important thing I just bold it. I want to put it in bigger letters than this, but the space is not enough. So one thing is very important is like national policy standards and the open data very important. Otherwise, these technologies will not build up. So you have to have this free. Why we came up with the paddy statistics, yield estimation? Because Landsat and the MODIS data free. That's why we can predict the yield now. If they're not free, US is giving us them free. But when it comes to the GNSS, most of your smartphones using a GNSS, you know how much the US nationality is paying for 1 year for this? Billions of dollars. Are we paying any single cents? Nothing. We just have to buy a receiver. Then we are there with all the technologies. But within ourselves, we have to have kind of like understanding, okay, the thing's going to change for this level, so we have to be open. We have to be open with the data, we have to be open with the technology, we have to have the sharing with the knowledge and the experience and the different aspects that we have to combine together, and we have to face for these things. We can't just talk about smart cities without these things. So that is one important thing, because The geospatial information is treated, we have to treat that as an essential component in decision-making process. We can't just say it's a kind of community, so you can sell it. So it should be a service. So all these things are service. So to do that in my nation and also many nations in the region, most of the people, the mindset should change very drastically. We are moving away from this information age. We don't need just information, we need data to connect. We are going away from this. So many people have to change their mindset and open up the data and come up with this new era. We have to welcome the new era of connected age, and we have to be all connected with all sort of social media and many different things. Several things driving our geospatial technology. One thing is Internet of Things. The other one is artificial intelligence. So that's something very important. And the nanotechnology. Smartphone carrying dual frequency receiver. Can you believe that? That is basically because of nanotechnology. The simple device with a very less amount of power is giving you such accuracy. Many things will expand our industry, so we have to get ready and ready for all these things. Thank you. I made it very quick. Thank you.
Sustainability is, in the concept where you promote, you have a so small society, like compact city concept in Japan, right? You have compact cities instead of having cities everywhere. You have compact cities, and you will everything and self-dependent, even for energy, food, everything. They are self-dependent, and you don't need to depend on other city or another entity. So the connectivity becomes, least important.
Going on with that theme, so what we have to think about the connectivity, right? Because we are talking about the cities which, the entire globe becoming a city, so means like we are very close now. So that's why I wanted to bring this piece of information to discuss here.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the plenary session, and it is the time to award the token of appreciations to the plenary. Professor Kanchana Perera. Mr. A. Dissanayake. Dr. Thilantha Lakmal, Dammalage. Thank you, sir. Please, RWB, RSB, USB, NDU to award a token of appreciation for the session chair, Professor Sabaragamuwa.